thank you for joining us on Living It Up, Making Life Juicy. I'm here with an incredible group of talented people, yes, and their husbands. Come on, you know I had to do that.
Yes.
All right, so we have the author, Morry David,
Hello.
the author of The Chase. He's an Amazon bestseller. And then we have his publisher, Dan Vega, who has his own television show, producer, host, and all that. These people are so talented. And then we have Penny, beautiful wife, and Sharon, beautiful wife.
You wanted to see my book.
Please. So he's a best-selling author. This is The Chase. Go ahead. Tell us all about it.
How it all happened.
I want to know.
I was born in...
No, please don't. What made you create this book, The Chase?
Well, actually, Chase was written a while ago, maybe close to 20 years ago. And when I wrote The Chase, I also wrote maybe 13 or 14 other books. And I attempted to go into the publishing industry because I thought, gee, I'm a wonderful writer. They're just going to open their doors and embrace me.
But why did you write The Chase?
Well, I'll tell you in a second.
Okay.
So anyhow, the publishing industry wasn't as receptive as I thought. And I put
20 years ago,
20 years ago, so I put everything aside. By the way, they basically said, have your agent contact us.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought, well, gee, I just need an agent. I didn't realize the agents only took on published authors. So at that point, I understood
It is the
what a
catch-22.
So I put everything aside, and about a year ago, I showed it to one of our friends, and he said, well, why isn't this published? And I told him the story. He said, well, a lot of time has passed. Why don't you try again?
Oh, I thought that was me that told you to try that again.
Probably
Well,
You
you were the ones that told the friend that I was a writer. They didn't believe it.
Okay.
So anyhow, so I found Indigo River Publishing on the internet, and I sent them a query letter. And next thing you know, they asked for the manuscript, which is the furthest I had ever gotten with a publisher.
Dan Vega is the creator of Indigo River
That's
Publishing.
correct. And he had a lovely acquisition editor, Georgette, who she said, we'd like to see the manuscript. And of course, I wanted to make sure she was reading. She wanted my manuscript, so she was talking to the right person. Right? So we gave the manuscript, and within 2 weeks, she calls me on the phone and says, you know, would you like to be published by Indigo River? And of course, I've never had that question asked to me before. And I said, sure. She said, well, we'll send you the contract and look it over. And at that point, I'm thinking, maybe this isn't real. Maybe this is a dream.
It's a dream.
Or maybe it's a nightmare. I didn't know.
Yes.
So I contacted a lawyer, and he said, well, it looks legitimate. And I decided to take Sharon. We went to Pensacola, Florida, because I wanted to make sure there was a person behind the voice.
And here he is.
And I met
Exactly.
Dan and his crew, and I have to say, it was like family. It was the most incredible experience that I ever had. So I said to Sharon, this is it.
Wow.
And they handled the manuscript, and of course they had to baby me a little bit because I wasn't sure of the processes of publishing. And of course I wanted everything done like a week, within a week.
They always do.
They assured me that it takes a little bit longer than that, but be patient. And they held my hand and set me up with a wonderful editor who thought that, gee, I was this great writer because there were no problems with the book.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't know that I had a wonderful friend that edited the book 19 years ago.
Yeah,
Okay.
wow.
So when I handed the book to the editor, he couldn't understand how a new writer could be this perfect. And it was all due to the editor that fixed the book up.
Yeah.
And from there we went to, we had surveyed test readers, and we had pretty positive responses.
Is that through you, Dan?
Yeah.
The test reader?
And we then said, okay, well, we have to make up a cover. Well, I know what I wanted, and Dan knew what he could do, but for some reason, I was a little stubborn but I want this. And Dan said, I get it, I just don't know how we're going to do it.
Okay.
And Dan just told me the story the other day, how there was a young boy that lived near them, And he said, I want you to get on this bicycle and look like you're pedaling for your life,
Yeah.
that somebody's
Yeah.
coming after you, which is exactly what I said to Dan I wanted.
Yeah.
And Dan gave direction to this boy, and he made it happen. And that's how we wound up with the cover of the Chase,
Nice.
which was the absolute perfect cover. It looks like almost like a movie.
Yeah.
We talk about a movie poster. And
But you still haven't said why you
Well-
ended up writing it.
thank you.
And this is why the wives.
Family friends.
Because if he's not gonna tell you, I will.
So,
Answer the question, Morry.
so anyhow,
Get back to the question, like
The-
a politician.
the reason I wrote The Chase is about 4 or 5 years before that, my son, who was younger, about 9 years old at the time, we said, why don't you write a story for the library? They were having a book contest. So he didn't know exactly how to begin it. So I said, pretend you're a cat.
Oh, well, you have to
and
go
you
back
got
further than
lost.
that.
And all these travels you had through while you were lost, and how you found your way home. And we called the book Cat Tales,
Oh,
Okay.
okay.
And this was written because
because
Our
we had
cat
lost a cat, and this really
got
did
out
happen.
of
And I said,
missing
let's,
for 33 days.
let's actually,
years?
33
33
days.
days,
Oh.
days.
So
Sorry.
we used to roam the neighborhood at night yelling Bubba. We were known as the family that yelled Bubba
Oh.
every single
But he
night.
still hasn't told you why you
Okay,
wrote the
I'll
book.
tell you. So anyhow, Justin won first place. And at that
Nice.
point, I said, now I have to actually be a writer. Because my
Wow.
son was a writer, now I have to be a writer. And the problem that we had is there were no real books out at the time other than Harry Potter
No, not Harry Potter, it's just
and
Goosebumps.
Goosebumps.
Goosebumps was
Oh,
the
yeah,
only
yeah.
for kids to read.
Yes.
And I grew up reading the Hardy Boys, even Nancy Drew,
Yeah.
you know, all these things, and those books didn't exist. They were on the shelves as an old book, but kids,
Right.
there's nothing
That's
new.
Right.
And I said, well, why can't I write a Hardy Boys type story, but base it on current events? And at the same time, why don't I have life experiences that maybe a 13 or 14-year-old would have that's outside their comfort zone, and show ways that they work through it?
Yeah.
Thinking that if a 14-year-old would read the book, they would say, wow, my life isn't that bad, look what happened to this kid,
Yeah,
and things
yeah.
turned out. So I decided to write The Chase. The Chase starts out with a 13-year-old boy who's woken up in the middle of the night by his father. The father says, you have to leave. The boy tries to turn on a light. The father yanks the cord out of the wall and says, no lights, just leave. So the boy doesn't know if his father just went off the deep end, doesn't want to be disrespectful. The father empties the kid's hockey bag of equipment, starts loading clothing into a hockey bag. He hands it to his son. He says, you have to leave now. The son, not wanting to anger his father, said, okay, Dad. Father opens up the bedroom window. He says, and you have to go out the bedroom window.
Oh my God.
So the son looks at him and says, but, and the father says, don't give me any buts. I know you know how to do this. You've done this before. You climb across the roof, down the tree. I know you've done this before. Don't tell me you know how to do this.
Right.
So the kid walks across the roof, climbs down the tree. He's waiting for the father to join him. Father's at the window, waving him away.
Wow.
So as the boy's in the back of his house, he is, he's at the edge of his property, and he's not facing the house. He hears a noise, and he turns around, and all of a sudden, his house blows up. And he's left with no parents, no home, a hockey bag full of clothing, 2 o'clock in the morning with no place to go. That's the first, that's the first chapter of The Chase.
All
That's
right.
like 2 pages in.
Yeah.
That's like 2 pages in. Oh my God. So,
Why?
what did you think when you first read the manuscript?
You know, I think that first Georgette, the acquisitions editor, she got a hold of it. So she brought it in and she's like, hey, can you read this? And she had already passed it around the office to a few editors. And so when I got into it, obviously I was right into the story because it just goes right into the scene and it's like,
Yeah.
whoa. But one of the reasons I think we wound up accepting it, to Morry's point, it is difficult to kind of get the attention of publishers and get those contracts because all publishers I think are inundated with just so many
I'm sure.
manuscripts. And I think the writing was great. Obviously, I didn't know it had been edited by a top-notch editor years prior. But I will say the writing is fantastic. Although there's not a shortage of great writers today. But what I learned a long time ago, probably through failure and making, the wrong decisions, is every opportunity out there, whether it be in business or in a book, that opportunity is only as good as the person behind it. So sometimes we're basing our decisions more on the strength of the person, or in this case the author, versus on just the manuscript. So if we're down to 10 really great well-written books, I'm like, let me learn about the authors. And Morry's a great writer, but he's a really great pitchman. And so the first time we got on the phone, we were on the phone, I don't know, a couple hours.
Oh my God.
I think literally by the time I hung up, I said, we're taking this book.
Just to
great.
interject,
That's great.
Sharon was sitting with me while I was talking with Dan, and she basically said, I don't know who's selling who.
Yeah.
Because
Exactly.
I'm trying to sell myself in the book, and Dan's trying to sell himself representing Indigo River.
Absolutely.
And, if we both would have stopped at any point, we would have said, it's fine, let's go.
Yeah.
We couldn't stop.
And then he's like, are you cool if I'm there like Tuesday? Or whatever it was. I was like, and that's kind of how I am. So I'm like, sure dude, we'll be waiting up for you.
Okay.
That was kind of how it worked.
Wow.
Yeah.
So how does it proceed from here? Well, now it went on Amazon officially
Well,
last Friday.
It went on last Friday. All books have a launch date. They may come out a few months before, but just like a restaurant or a casino, there's a soft opening and then there's the opening. And the soft opening is like, okay, we got to get our ducks in a row.
Yeah.
And I had to learn a little bit from Indigo on how to get the ducks in a row, because I immediately wanted to launch this and go after it, and they slowed me down and said there are procedures. Okay.
Like
and,
what?
Well, for instance, when you're
Wait,
on
that was the
Amazon,
answer. Question.
I actually would like to learn something from Morry. I'm going to talk about this
all
Morry.
right,
That's
all
actually
right.
worked well.
All right.
Well, there's a lot of things, there's a social media component, obviously, and a lot of it is also just creating content that's usable. So you want to create different sales pieces that you can use to promote, right? And so all of that has to be created with designers, and then kind of setting up a strategy of, who's going to be doing social media, and who's going to be doing reach outs to the low-hanging fruit, let's say people that are currently in the database. So there's a little bit to orchestrate that might take, 6 or 8 weeks of, lead time to kind of,
Oh, wow. Okay.
to be the most effective. I think a lot of people just get the book out and they're so excited they'll release it, but they really fail to plan and never really get traction when it comes to the sales. And that's really, I think, the hope of most authors, not just to have some commercial success and hit bestseller, but I think a lot of them, like Morry, is to get the book in people's hands to really make a real impact. And
Right.
that's one reason I really love this industry, is because books and music are those few last things that can really cross all gaps, whether it be age, race, generational, even geographical territory. It can reach people and make them feel something, and maybe shift a perspective or even a behavioral change.
Yeah.
And
it can stick with them for the rest of their lives.
yeah, really.
Yeah.
You don't know how it impacts them, and so that's something that I think is very important. And Morry certainly set the example. I think it was bestseller in like a couple hours.
3 hours.
Yeah.
How about that?
And what we've learned is Amazon is so wide as far as the types of books that they sell, that if you try to outsell every book in Amazon, it can't be done.
Yeah.
But Dan and his team showed me that Amazon has categories, and if you find the proper categories that best suit your book, those categories may have a smaller volume of books being sold. So you can then manage to outsell the people in those categories. You're not against 8 million books, you're against 5,000 books.
Yes.
So we did this in 3 hours, and of course
That's incredible.
we were kind of happy about that, and now we want to keep it going.
In fact, we've already signed an agreement for a second book, and I know there's how many more in the pipeline?
Oh,
There's a
well,
lot.
the
Let's just
third,
say three.
the third
more
book,
than three.
should we talk about the third book? I don't even know if we should talk about
What about the
that.
second?
The second.
But
The
the second book is currently, it just finished its first series of being edited,
Okay.
which is basically for content and flow, things of that situation. Then it goes to a more detailed editing group where they make sure that every T is crossed and every
Yeah.
comma is in its proper place. And of course, before it goes there or after it goes there, Sharon looks at it and then finds all the mistakes that everybody has made. She's the best.
Sharon,
She's the
I can't
best copy. But now she still has a problem with the comma before the word "and." This is
The grammar rules have changed over the years, so.
but nevertheless, the second book is on its way, and hopefully, if it comes out without any problems with the cover or whatever, it might be out around January or February.
Oh, excellent.
And we're hoping it's a sequel to the
And what's it
That's
called?
my next question.
That's called The Ghost
Can you
of
get your hands
Shepherd's
off
Inn.
of the title and like?
Yeah, the person-
And I don't want to give too much away of why or how it became a sequel, because you have to read this book
Right.
to find out how it worked out. The second book
Absolutely.
flows. The third book that we're working on is basically a modern day version of E.T. And that could be very cool. You know, I'm still writing it now, and we're hoping that, you know, if I don't get hit by a bus tomorrow, I can write a little bit more every day.
Well, I was gonna give the wives a second to talk, but after that segue.
Yeah, really.
I'm not sure how else to lean into that. Has insurance
Yeah.
policy.
I have the insurance in place. I think that Sharon, it's iffy if she really wants me to get hit by a bus or not. Sometimes she does, sometimes she doesn't. She may be driving the bus.
Oh, no.
I don't think she would. She might hire someone to, but.
No, I think the pleasure would be
Going into the dark
driving the
area
bus.
here.
There are times where she's looking for the keys for the bus.
Maybe.
Oh.
But we all have wives that are
Yes.
supportive. And when you have a personality like mine, and I'm sure a personality like Dan, you have to have a special wife that can put up with our shenanigans.
That's sweet.
Shenanigans, I like
Because
that.
they're used to us spinning tales of what we're going to do next, and they're saying to themselves, I don't know. You know, it's like,
Crazy.
is this another
Yeah.
crazy idea, or is this really going to work?
Ken, did you have that going on?
I at some degree, but I don't think overly crazy. It's just
Okay.
more of how many balls do we already have in the air that we're
Juggling,
juggling.
exactly.
So it's not how crazy the scheme is. Can we really handle another scheme?
Right.
Not that they're schemes, but just that
Oh,
one
I
more
knew what you
thing.
were saying,
Right,
Just one more
right.
thing,
Right.
you know. So
I do walk in the door
Yeah.
sometimes with pretty crazy stuff,
Okay.
and I've noticed over the years, I'll say, you know, I'm flying here and I'm doing this, and it's actually become normal. She just goes,
okay.
okay. So it's like, I don't know if much is even
Well, I
crazy
think
at this point.
I have more of the normal aspect. We have a son. He's 11, so
Oh.
I'm a mom.
Yeah.
You know.
yeah. So that's a
Dogs,
grounding
I'm just-
experience, and
I'm trying to keep things balanced and normal.
Yeah.
So it's kind of perspective.
Right.
So it's like Sharon, you know, is a mom. Her kids are older, so you're doing it more later with your kids being grown. But you know,
Yeah.
I mean, but
If I
I'm sure
had
he's always been the
kids-
same.
Yes, if my kids were still living at home, I would have to be spending more time with
yeah.
them because it's just.
And her
Right,
answer,
it is.
she would always say to kids, just don't pay attention to
Just-
Bob.
Oh no.
He's just being dad, you know?
And they know
I
that, you
know.
know. They're
Because
very-
that's coming up, in fact, Sharon's at a point where she said, I'll believe this when I see it.
Okay.
So right now, I'm a best-selling author, and she still doesn't believe it.
But don't you think though that might
That's
give you
true.
the extra drive that you need?
Well,
Because
yeah,
anybody,
because I have to prove to her.
anybody you
Yeah.
want
That's
her
right.
to see and be satisfied. You
That's
want that like thumbs
Yeah.
up from her.
That behind
Especially-
every man, there's a wife that pushes him. Maybe over the edge, but they push him.
Yeah, and I like coming home to that normalcy. You know, sometimes it's so
You need
much.
it, I think.
I very rarely talk business at all at home because I just want to, have a little bit of a normal life. And it's not, once in a while I'll mention something about business and then I'm like, yeah, that's why I don't talk about business.
I like Morry who
Yeah.
talks
Well, I think
about
I just get
business
too,
all the time.
I get too worked up. Like I have he's like, yes, you shouldn't, don't be in business.
You can't be so
Rigid. But it's exciting for Julian to hear certain things. He gets
Oh,
excited, you know.
absolutely.
You know what I was most concerned about?
What?
Whether their son would like the book.
Yeah, he
And-
Because I needed to know
Really?
whether I was hitting the mark. He's, 11 years old?
He's right in the
Which
right
is,
age.
if he didn't like the book, that would be I'd be out rewriting this book.
he's the demographic.
That's it.
So that
Wow.
meant more to when I get feedback from Facebook. Where
Well, truth
somebody
be
says,
told, he actually tried out for the cover, but he was a little bit too
Oh,
young.
wow, that's so cute.
And then his friend got the cover, and then he's kind of like, Dad, I pretty much had something to do with making that book, right? And I'm like, well, yeah, you tried out, and
Absolutely. Well, we can take some credit.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That's awesome.
Absolutely.
But you know how Dan said he doesn't too much talk to Penny about many
Yeah.
things anymore? Well, now I'm finding out that I can talk to Dan and Dan can talk to me.
right.
So, because we'll just believe each other. We'll feed
Yeah.
them
And the wives are like,
Yeah.
Thank God, exactly. They have each
Yeah.
other to play off of.
So we've developed this, it's not just a publisher, okay? I
And a
feel
writer.
that, and
Yeah.
a writer, I feel that Dan, his entire organization is like family.
yeah.
But especially, Dan came up here. Okay,
Yes.
that says something about,
That's a lot.
for somebody
Yeah,
to
that's
come up and say,
dedication.
let's visit.
Yeah.
Now, while they're here, the wives will go do things with us that we never normally take them to do, so we plan on going to the art museum after, how many years have we been married?
40 years, but
Have-
42 years
Have you ever
ago.
gone to the art museum?
No.
So-
And you know that I have asked, but
So,
it's not his thing.
we're doing
There's a
that thing.
bromance going on here, which is just, I'm very good with, but it's funny how, things that I have asked Morry to do over the years, like, nah, I'm not really into it. And Dan says, well, yeah, exactly. How about we do this? And he's like, yeah, sure, man, I'm right there.
Okay. Oh, boy.
So I'm good with it. It's
We're
really.
going to a vegetarian restaurant tonight, and I'm a meat person.
Yeah.
Yes, he's definitely a carnivore, so,
So.
yeah.
We appreciate the sacrifice.
He is making a huge
But I know when I come back down to Pensacola,
I'll
you'll
take
eat,
you
you'll,
for a
you'll,
steak.
you'll eat a big piece of
Yeah.
prime rib just for
He
me,
will.
right?
Yeah. Oh, so you're the vegetarian?
No, they both are.
I'm
Oh, okay.
vegetarian, he's gone vegan, except
That's
on vacation.
hardcore.
Well, when I travel,
Or out of town.
I'll eat vegetarian.
She's out of town a lot.
So I try to travel a lot.
Right. We were talking about butter earlier. Like, like butter.
Yeah.
But you tell us about the TV show that you have.
Yeah, I never actually sought to be in television. I spent 10 years full time in the seminar business, doing financial seminars. And one time after a seminar in California, there was a guy in the audience that worked for NBC and was like, dude, you need to be on TV,
Yeah,
you should
you've
be
got
doing
great
this thing. And at the time, we kind of met and talked about it, but it didn't come to fruition. Our family plan and that didn't really align. But then a couple of years later, we did put the terms together with ABC. So we actually started out, I remember it was actually wild because the mayor went with me to the network and he's like, tell about your show. I didn't even have a show, it was like a thought.
Okay.
And I was like, this guy's got a show, tell him about the show. And so they take me into this boardroom of 10 people in suits and they're like, tell us about this show. There was no show. So I sat there, it was like a Seinfeld moment.
I was
I'm
going to
like,
say, it sounds like a.
yeah, I'm sitting there and I'm
The
like,
show about nothing.
Show about
it was, we're sitting there and I literally was sitting there and I go, picture this. And I went right into the whole deal and then they were going like this, so is it more like this or more like that? And I'm like, kind of like that, but not so much. And I'm like, they're asking all these details, I'm just making it up on the fly and they were like,
Wow.
we love it. So they said,
Great.
let's start, and we can't start you nationally like the other offer was, but we'll start you in 3 states. And then if it's good and you got good ratings, we'll expand it nationally. And don't get your hopes up because 98% of television fails the first season, and we'll see how it goes. And so I said, okay. And fortunately, I had a lot of really great alliances from the seminar business that I could call and I'm like, dude, I need you to be on my show.
Yeah.
So from leverage, I was able to get through the first season, and then we
Right.
got re-picked up and
Good.
eventually expanded to about 40 million homes.
Excellent.
So that was a really neat experience, and primarily interviewing entrepreneurs and occasionally celebrities, and it was a great time. We did it for about 6 seasons.
Excellent. Wow. Okay, NBC.
Yeah. Yeah.
Where do you go from here?
Yeah. I don't know.
Well, and we just actually relaunched the show because ABC was actually telling me I took a hiatus back in 2016 because I had an opportunity to write for a reality television show. Who
Okay.
knows, those are written. But so it was
Yeah, they
a
are,
one season, 12 episode commitment. And I really wanted to do it. And frankly, with the show at the time, I was a little burned out of just doing it for so long. I needed a little bit of a break. So we were able to put the show on hiatus. And I wrote the other show. And then ABC was calling saying, hey, you need to come back to the table or we're going to give this opportunity to somebody
Oh
else.
my God.
And I didn't want to lose the opportunity, but at the same time, it's such a big production. And, Indigo started really getting some traction all around the world with great authors like Morry. And I just didn't know if I could do both. So we started doing some research of where I thought network television was going. And I really believe that, gone are the days of having 1,000 channels, nothing's on, and, cable and satellite. And really the people today that are ruling is, Netflix, Hulu,
Netflix,
Amazon,
yeah.
Roku,
Yeah.
YouTube, obviously, right? And those are really the titans. So we started brokering a deal with Roku about a year ago, and a lot of negotiation, but we were actually recently approved for our own channel
Nice.
for Roku, Apple TV, and Amazon. So we
Excellent.
just started filming actually a couple of weeks ago.
Wow, that's so exciting.
Yeah,
That's really exciting.
yeah.
So Penny's gonna have her own show, right?
Oh. I'm usually a behind the scenes
If
person.
you were gonna do a show though, what would it be called?
Maybe a segment.
I don't know. Maybe with food. I love cooking.
Yes.
I love,
There you go.
which is hard being a vegetarian because I can't eat. I mean, I could eat meat, but I won't.
But a lot of people are vegetarian now, so that would be a great.
But I would still want to cook meat.
Okay.
Is that weird?
Just don't eat it.
Vicariously through other people.
I don't eat it. I know. I
Just
can-
call me
I know
after
it
you cook
ta-
the meat.
Yeah, more
I
right
know
down.
it tastes good, but I just
We're gonna have Morry's personal chef.
There you go.
the meat grilling.
Cooking
just-
for Morry.
That's the name of the show. Morry's personal chef.
Cooking for Morry. Yeah.
Yeah, cooking for Morry. That actually sounds like a show.
Yeah, it does.
Oh, that's so
Wow.
funny.
That's something that Sharon.
Sharon already
Yes,
has it.
there we go.
I can't use that
Cooking
show
for
because
Sharon-
Sharon already has
Sharon
that show.
wanted the show How to Get Away with Murder, but that was already taken up.
Oh my God.
You have
Well, I
something
I feel we have wine.
Yes.
I'm just so happy that you all were able to
Oh.
join me on the show today. Thank you for opening up your home
my
to us.
pleasure.
and-
Thank you for coming
Yes,
out.
and thank you both for joining us.
Yes,
and
our
thank you
pleasure.
all.
Thank you so much for having us.
Yeah.
And remember, you can find The Chase on Amazon under M. David.
There
And,
you go.
we only have a limited 40 million books, so if you buy them
Still
now
get
before they
one.
run out.
Right.
So-
And how, aren't you offering $3?
Yes, well, Sharon
Yes.
had that, I think she was using it as
As a fan.
a fan, but nevertheless, okay, we're connected with, Sharon and I have been members of the Eileen Stein Jacoby Fund, which is a breast cancer foundation that was started 10 years ago. We raised over $3 million for breast
Wow.
cancer. All
Wow.
the money, there is no money used as administrative costs.
Mhm.
All the money goes to breast cancer research.
Nice.
So I was talking to Dan the other day, and we came up with a program that for every book sold until the end of October, we would donate $3 to the to Eileen Stein Jacoby Fund.
Wow.
Okay, so anybody that buys the book from now to October 31st,
Excellent.
you're helping save a life, perhaps.
Excellent.
And Morry, let me ask you a question. For this lovely lady's viewers that are watching this episode and thinking, maybe I should, this is a guy that's kind of followed his passion, maybe I should be following my passion, maybe I'm going to pull the trigger right, but what's the piece of advice you can give her viewers about
Great
maybe
Well,
showing
question.
method.
I think
You
it's,
gotta look at the camera.
I think there's something that's been proven here.
It's done everywhere.
This has started, a process that started 20 years ago. So I actually say this in the book, never give up on a dream. If you think you're good enough, keep on going. What's the worst that could happen? Failure, okay, or making a mistake is not failure. Okay, what a problem is not learning from your mistakes. So the more mistakes you make, the smarter you should become, and the more successful you should become. So don't worry about failures, just follow your dreams. And here we go.
But
There it
first
is.
time-
We have a phone call, ending the session.
Thank you for joining us.
I think we have a live viewer calling right now. We're gonna take that and,
I'm done. I'm done.
Thanks for joining us on Living It Up, Making Life Juicy. Good job, everybody. Half an hour. Nice.